Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my weekly wrap-up of April 3rd, 2016, wherein I tell you about the 3 books that I read this past week. But also, by the time that you're watching this, the short fiction live show that I did with Joe will be over and the recording should be up on my channel, so I will link that down below if you missed it when it was live. Let's get straight into it. The first thing that I finished, finally, hallelujah, was Pandoras Star by Peter F. Hamilton. This is a science fiction novel, the first in his Commonwealth saga, and it took me almost the entire month of March to read. The edition that I read was just under 800 pages, but apparently in everyone else's it's like 1,000 pages, so it was a slow, ponderous, long science fiction novel. My opinion of this book started out kind of average, it went up, and it's going down again, because there are some things about it that just aren't sitting well with me. The story is set 300 or 400 years in the future when humanity is colonizing other planets because we now have wormhole technology, we have gateways to other planets. We've come across some alien species, fun stuff like that, and then one day we notice that a distant star disappears. It's actually a pair of stars, and they are both simultaneously, instantaneously enclosed in Dyson spheres. So humanity builds a spaceship, sends it there to discover whether the Dyson spheres are meant to contain a threat or protect from an external threat. There's also a group of people who think there's like this evil alien force out there. They want to sabotage the spaceship project to keep us from going to the Dyson sphere, the Dyson stars, because that's what the evil alien wants us to do. The world building and the plot itself were really interesting to me. That's why I kept reading, because I really enjoyed the whole idea of the Dyson star and making contact with really advanced aliens. There are also some chapters from an alien's viewpoint, which I thought were some of the most interesting parts of the book to read. For a book that has a whole bunch of tremendously important and exciting events in it, it felt really slow. There was this ponderous bulk to it, and I felt like I had to really wade through a lot of unnecessary sections to get to the meat of the story. There were also quite a few characters that I didn't understand why they were in the story, not because their plot lines didn't eventually intersect, but just they were boring and I didn't care about reading them. The real turnoff for this book, though, is that in the second half, I suddenly noticed that all of the female characters were not sitting well with me. It seems, from what I've read of some other people's reviews of Hamilton's work, that he has a tendency to write a lot of female characters as walking sex fantasies. They're all sexy young nymphs in this book, or even if they're a strong, powerful woman who's really influential in the events of the story, they have to have a sex scene moment where it's just like, Justine and Casimir, could we just not do that to her character? But really it was the character of Melanie that almost broke me. She's the sexy nymphette type, she's seduced by an older man, and then she basically ends up prostituting herself for another woman to do reporting journalism work, and it really was kind of disgusting, honestly. This started bothering me so much in the second half of the book that I think I'm gonna try reading Judas Unchained, which is the conclusion of the story, but it's an even longer book. Apparently the character of Melanie is still not so great in that one, so I will go into it tentatively and I will not feel bad if I have to DNF it, because I want to love Hamilton. Like, I was so excited about finding another science fiction author I could really get into, and he just might not be for me. And then I read a completely different type of book in every single way, and that was Swordspoint by Kushner. This was a reread for me, but this time I listened to the audiobook, which was excellent. It's one of those Neil Gaiman Presents audiobooks. Kushner does the narration, but she has a full supporting cast of people who do voices for characters. There's background music and sound effects. And wow, this just made everything come alive for me. When I read this book a little over a year ago, I gave it 5 stars because I enjoyed it so much. But this time, I really felt the atmosphere of the world. I really felt the emotions of the characters. It just worked so well. So I loved this audiobook. I love listening to it. I'm really glad that I reread it this way. This is a fantasy of manners, and I actually recently mentioned it in my overlooked fantasy video, and I'm really glad I did because it's a different type of fantasy novel. It doesn't have any magic in it, but it is set in a secondary world, and it has a lot of the elements of a fantasy novel of like lower technology, kind of medieval-esque, or I don't know, Renaissance era feel to it. That you have the nobility, you have the poorer people who live in the not so great part of town, you have swordsmen and duels, and a lot. Mostly it's political and court intrigue. The story is about the premier swordsman in town named Richard St. Vere and his lover Alec, who is a contemptuous, mysterious ex-scholar. They get embroiled in some of the political squabbling and maneuvering between the nobles of the city, and when St. Vere kills somebody when he's not on contract for a duel, there are gonna be repercussions. I love everything about this book. I love the way it's written, I love the characters, I love the squabbling and the politics, and this time around I was really focused more on the motivations of characters and the discussion, I think, of whether only nobility get to defend their honor, or if the swordsman and the everyday person also has honor that they can defend and that they get to uphold. I really liked that part in the conclusion of the story where questions were being kind of asked like that. So this is definitely one that I recommend that people read. I do understand why some people wouldn't like it because it's kind of a slower, low-key story. There is no magic. I mean, if you find dueling scenes to be interesting, then that will be the height of the excitement. The final thing that I finished this week was A Monstrous Regiment of Women by Laurie R. King. This is the second mystery in the Russell and Holmes mystery series, and I quite enjoyed this one, though I don't think it was on par with my feelings for the first book. That was The Beekeeper's Apprentice, which I read and I reviewed recently. Now, given what I said in my review of The Beekeeper's Apprentice about how I interpreted Russell and Holmes' relationship and what I wanted to see of their relationship in the future, you might expect me to be really disappointed in A Monstrous Regiment of Women, and I'm not. Because I think I kind of set my expectations. I figured that this was going to happen anyway with their relationship. Some people kind of insinuated to me that this was going to happen, and I prepared myself. I also expected it to be done pretty well, and I would say it was. It didn't come as a surprise. There was enough stuff happening in the book and in Mary Russell's thoughts to make me accept it by the end. I'm still not like super over the moon about it, but I am interested to see how their relationship will be dealt with in future books given what happened at the end of this one. As for the plot or the mystery of the book itself, I thought it was okay. I actually think the mystery was kind of weak and not totally surprising either, but it's well written and there was a lot of character development. So the story is that Mary Russell, is introduced to Marjorie Child, a woman leading a feminist movement, by a mutual friend, and then Mary starts noticing that a couple of women have died in the past. They all have connections to Marjorie. She finds the common thread and then she's investigating that. She's also trying to investigate whether Marjorie is a fraud, I guess, if she's a mystic, what her end goal is, if she is actually really the person that she presents herself as. So I guess it was okay. I had some questions throughout the book, but I don't like mystic characters. I thought Marjorie was actually quite boring, and I didn't really understand why Mary was so entranced by her, probably because I just don't understand the whole mystic thing. But anyway, it did have a lot of character development in it, and Holmes definitely had a more supporting role. I thought the spotlight was much more on Mary and on her side of their relationship, which I think I really enjoyed, and I think that's why at the end of the book I was okay with where things were going. I will definitely be reading the next book in this series, though it won't be happening in April because this month I am only reading books that I own, except for those 2 pesky interlibrary loans that came at the most awkward of times. But I will talk more about my April plans probably in another video. But that is everything I have to say about what I read this past week. If you've read any of them, or if you want to, please comment down below if you want to give me your thoughts on what you think about Peter F. Hamilton's writing and how poorly he writes female characters. Feel free to do that. I'm trying to contain my resentment about that right now, my disappointment. But anyway, hope you have a fantastic week, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.